Put your helmets on. Your safety is important to us. Ship passengers bound for the southern Gulf Islands will board the vessel by way of the main car deck. At berth number...
Camping and kids going crazy and the booze all over the place and stuff. Probably one of the things for the adults and craft beer and all the local wineries and all that kind of stuff. But if you got one of these at home, it's a 10-year-old.
I can recognize Vicky, don't you?
Vaguely, I remember them, but nice work on your truck there. Oh, geez, that one's been fun. Right off. Yeah, it's just clicking and then bam.
And then there's fire. Not too often I have a grand television call. Say wine.
Why? So do you want me to get it?
Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right. You're going to be tall. He's going to be tall.
Whiskey. Oh, Mom, why'd you steal the plant punchline?
Oh, is that what you were going to say?
Face is short.
I haven't drank in like 5 years.
Rich is the best.
Actually, it's been a little bit longer than that. Probably 7 years.
I know. Long family function.
All polished up.
There you go. It's all set. All you have to do is walk around when you're done. Push that. It's recording now? Yes.
Well, pretty soon you'll have a complete ritual.
Hey, Alan.
Oh, where is that camcorder?
Turn off my
Say
camera.
some really terrible things right now, so it's on.
We're starting. Okay.
That's special and important. Celebrate his life and echo his adventurous spirit. Love every moment of life and share that love with those that meant the most to you, just like he did. Be brave, loyal, and caring, just as he was, to his closest friends. Thank God for the memories and the years of friendships that he gave to you. This is a time to celebrate. Let us be glad we got to be a part of his life, and be glad and happy that he got to be a part of our lives. Let us be excited about our future and how he played a hand in all of us. Reach into our hearts and our souls to find Rod McGeachie there and bring him out and rejoice alongside of you. Sing like he would sing. He was always a singer. I remember he sung at your guys' wedding there. I always wondered where the singing came from, where the musical side came from in our family, but now we know. We've known for quite some time. Now we are gathered together. Let us try and remember through Rod that although Rod is gone, he lived, and that his life gave us memories too beautiful to forget. It's been some time since I've seen so many of my family members in one place at a time, and it makes me happy to see everybody coming out. If anything I took from my grandfather's legacy is that family is everything, so I'm sure he's smiling down on us right now. What my grandfather taught me wasn't something that was known to me as a learning lesson from him at the time, but I look back and reflect on it, on the man he was. I have to take notice on the man who he helped me become. I only wish to mirror half of my grandfather's love that he has for his children, and that would be enough for a lifetime. I wish to love my future wife as he did my grandmother, even 25 years after her passing. To follow in my grandfather's footsteps would be a big task. He lived a life that impacted on so many lives and young men, and it doesn't go unnoticed. He casts a very big shadow. I will remember my grandfather as a man I admire and aspire to be like. And I encourage anybody to come up here and tell any part of your story or anything, any memory that you have of him, whether sad, whether happy, anything. let's all just share our happy moments with my grandfather and Rod McGeachie. If anybody wants to take the floor, that would be the time.
Someone get up and read that.
Am I going to be the only one?
We're all shy.
The same family.
I'm the nervous. Dale has something? Anybody, anything, your fondest memory of the man. I know he did a lot of things in his lifetime.
I might need my glasses for this.
Yeah, you need
them.
The Boy Scouts. He's done so much for this community. Every community he's ever lived in, he played a big part in and touched a lot of lives. Yeah. That's what
She's gonna go up there. She's gonna go up.
That's all you.
She's
Just
gonna go
2
up.
cents from the back.
I'll read this.
This is our half pipe. This is our stage. I'm gonna take a seat, but
Whoever's last on there has to speak.
Don't go too far away, just a short one. We haven't known Rodney very long, but since we did, he was a part of our life. We used to go out when he was at Rodney, and there he was, always learning from day one, with a big smile, this beautiful big smile. And often he would greet us with this big voice of his. He would move out. It was beautiful. We always enjoyed those visits. One of the things he always made sure I had was his chair.
Yeah.
Beth, you have to sit there. See how it works? You do this to get your legs up. And you can put it back. You are to sit in my chair, and you'd get me all settled, and then he and Byron would talk together. And we heard a bit about David. And what he did. He loved to talk. He's full of everything, you know. He loved to reminisce on the past. And he did a very good job of it. Well, we ended up just really loving that man. Such a sweetheart. And wherever you are, Rod, we won't forget you.
What are the results of the children and the grandchildren? Something I wrote took 2 weeks to do. I got one, a poem in loving memory of Dad. He never looked for praises. He was never one to boast. He just went on quietly working for the ones he loved the most. His dreams were seldom spoken. His wants were very few. And most of the time his worries went unspoken too. He was there, a firm foundation, through all our storms of life, a sturdy hand to hold on to in times of stress and strife. A true friend we could turn to when times were good or bad, one of our greatest blessings, the man that we called Dad. So who was Rod McGeachie? He was my dad. Born on September 27, 1922 in New Westminster, British Columbia, during times that were tight and money was sometimes hard to come by for many families. He was the son of John McGeachie of Glasgow, Scotland, and Ellen Duffy McGeachie of Liverpool, England. Dad was the youngest of 4 children. In 1922, my grandparents, John and Ellen McGeachie, moved to Burnaby, BC, first living on Formby Street near Douglas Road, on the edge of East Burnaby. Their house was an unfinished shell with an outhouse at the rear. So we're lucky. This is where Dad and his older brothers, John, known as Jack, and Thomas, known as Tom, and his sister Mary, Florence, known as Florence, spent the years before moving back to New Westminster. As Dad grew up alongside his siblings, the surrounding areas provided them with many activities and some marvelous treats, such as blackberries and huckleberries, which grew in abundance in the season. When he was older, Dad would help to pick buckets of berries, which Grandma Ellen would convert into delicious pies and jams. Life was not easy for Dad's family. Their shiplap and tar paper house never seemed to get finished, principally because with the growing family, Grandpa John's money never seemed to stretch beyond the basic necessities. Winters were especially uncomfortable. At night, my grandmother Ellen would have to pile her children's beds high with everything she could find to cover them. When everyone woke up in the morning, the stove would be out, the nails in the walls would be covered with ice, and Grandpa John's false teeth that were kept in a cup of water beside the bed would be frozen solidly in a cup of ice. It was my Uncle Jack's responsibility as the oldest to keep a good supply of firewood handy to heat the house. This was especially important when Grandma had her baking days, where she made fat loaves of bread and dozens of sticky buns, cinnamon buns. The only part of her baking days that my Uncle Jack didn't like was when he had to fetch the fresh eggs from the dirt floor basement. Being the oldest, he had this chore. You see, with no refrigeration, the only way to keep fresh eggs was to store them in troughs of water in a glass, a cold and slimy substance which imparted a most unpleasant sensation when hands were plunged into it. Dad attended Edmund Street School while he lived in Burnaby. This was a big gray two-story wooden building on the land that is now the school's playing field. Favorite games at recess, lunchtime, before and after school were things like marbles, and ante-over, and kick the can of nobbies, which I don't know what they is. Another fun thing that the children did was to roll wood or metal hoops, which the children guided with a short stick. A good incentive to get to school on time was that the Burnaby Municipal Police, who were dedicated and well-liked men, patrolled their beat on foot, and if they found a student who was not in class during school hours, they made it their business to find out why. It was these childhood experiences that helped to shape Dad's character into the young man and then the adult that he became. Dad once owned a jewelry and watch repair shop, Broderick's Jewelers, which was located at 928 12th Street in New Westminster. He was always very fond of relating to us kids the story about how he first learned how to repair a watch. He explained how he had removed the back cover off of a watch, and all the tiny pieces they sprang out and landed all over the floor. Of course, there was nothing else to do but locate all the pieces, put them back together, and hope the watch worked again. Dad never forgot this learning experience. When World War II broke out, Dad left his store and enlisted on Tuesday, October 6, 1942, in Vancouver, British Columbia. He joined up with the Canadian Infantry Corps and was with the Queen's Own Rifles when they landed on Juno Beach on D-Day. The only thing about this day that Dad would talk about for a long time was that the seas were very rough and the soldiers had a hard time getting to the beach from the barges. And he also mentioned that were shot by their own people. This is an experience why Dad would never travel anywhere on a boat unless it was the size of a BC ferry. It wasn't until years later when he was a guest on a radio broadcast for Remembrance Day that he opened up about his war experiences. There was one other story that Dad always related to me about his time during the war. He was wandering around by himself. He was weary and needing a place to rest when he came upon a church. When he entered, he saw that all except one cot were already filled, so he laid down and slept. The next day when he woke up to better light, he discovered to his dismay that all the cots held the bodies of soldiers who were killed in action. Of course, Dad was a bit unnerved to think that while he had slept, he could have been mistaken for one of the deceased soldiers. Dad served 9 months in Canada and 32 months overseas, including 17 and a half months in Northwest Europe. He was discharged on demobilization in Vancouver, BC on Wednesday, March 6, 1946. It was awarded the usual decorations for service: the CVSM and class, the 1939-1945 star, the France and Germany star, the Defense Medal, and the War Medal. Dad returned to his jewelry and watch repair shop after the war. He also picked up again with the Boy Scouts of Canada. It was during this time that Dad met Mom, 19-year-old Ivy Ada Alden. She had come to Canada as a sea evacuee from Norwich, England, when the war began. Mom was a dancer and very often won awards that she wanted to have engraved, so she took them into Dad's store. They were also acquainted due to her involvement with Girl Guides. This gave them a common bond, as Dad himself was active in the Boy Scouts, at the time serving as Assistant Scoutmaster for the 4th Burnaby Group. He had been doing so for 2 years prior to his enlistment into the Army. He soon became the District Scoutmaster. I have a letter dated May 13, 1948, that Dad had to write to Miss Alden, an apology for a mix-up in the hall arrangements he had made for one of her Girl Guide meetings. The hall she had held her meetings in had been sanded and varnished, and he had assured her that it would be ready for her Tuesday evening. And of course it wasn't. It wasn't until about half an hour before she was due to arrive that he was informed that the hall was indeed not ready. Dad quickly made other arrangements for Mom, but the young boy who was to deliver the message didn't do it on time. Well, Mom just decided to have the meeting outside on the lawn because it was a very pleasant evening. It was only 2 months later, things must have gone really well. It was only 2 months later that Dad and Mom became engaged. It was Thursday, July 1st, 1948, which was a leap year, that he asked Mom to marry him. They were in a green Chev, and it was 10:30 at night, and they were parked in front of 333 Pine Street in New Westminster. Dad gave Mom her diamond ring on July 3rd, 1948. They were married on June 30th, 1949, at St. Peter's Church in New Westminster. All the marriage documents stated that they were married in St. Francis de Sales Church in Burnaby. But because of wet paint this time, Dad didn't have to apologize for that one. The minister just moved the whole wedding, and they all moved to New Westminster and held the ceremony there. After a honeymoon in Victoria, Dad and Mom moved into their first home located in New Westminster. Later they moved to Kamloops, BC, where my 2 sisters and I were born. Later they moved back to the BC coast, where my brother Colin was born in Abbotsford. Eventually, Dad moved our family to Edmonton, Alberta, where they bought a house. Dad was still very involved in the scouting movement. He became the field executive for Northern Alberta, Canada, where he also served with the Edmonton District Council, Alberta, and Mackenzie Council and Central Alberta Regional Council. This required him to travel quite a bit between Edmonton, Alberta, and the Peace River area. During his scouting years in Edmonton, our family enjoyed many summer months at the Boy Scout camp at Skeleton Lake, giving us all some fun memories. And Annette should tell some stories about that, about her boyfriend there. Scouts were older those days. They were 15 years old. They're not like little kids now. We had a lot of fun with those 15-year-olds. Dad received the Silver Acorn, which is a scouting award for distinguished service. The award was presented to him by Roland Kitchener, who was the Governor General at that time. This award was to recognize Dad's 20 years of active leadership in the Boy Scout movement. Dad also moved our family to Calgary, Alberta, where he carried on with scouting. This time we spent our summers at Camp Woods Boy Scout Camp at Silver Lake, Alberta. Dad's scouting leadership has left many fun-filled memories in so many boys' lives. And I have to tell you this, Dad was having his bathroom refinished, and he called in a repairman to do all the repairs like around the bathtub. And the contractor says, he recognized the name McGeachie, and he said, "Are you the Rod McGeachie that set those live chickens out in camp, and us boys had to go and find them and fuck them and cook them for dinner?" And I goes, "Yeah." So he remembered all that time. about those chickens. Dad brought them home one day. They were left at the scout office in a box. So Dad brought them home. So we had live chickens in our basement for a while in kind of a pen. I know we cooked one. I think that was in Calgary. No, it was probably Edmonton. And Mom's like, what are you going to do with these chickens? So he got the great idea to take them